So when we made Friday's video, of course, we showed this new footage of the Defender. This is, the exterior shots that we've been waiting for. And there were some comments in that video that said, see, the wings are slanted downwards. You can now see clearly from the front. They've totally changed the configuration of the wings, so it's not a big deal anymore. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So, if you look at this image here, right, this is a very early concept image of the Defender. This is something that if you have subscriber access, you can go and pull that, pull all these pieces of art out that show ships in various stages of development, even before we ever saw them. And you can see two distinct configurations for the ship, the landed configuration and the flight configuration. And that is what I think people are mistaking this as a fix for. What you're seeing is not a ship in the flight configuration. You're seeing the ship in the landed configuration. Now here's one of the images from the initial sale of the Defender. And once again, it's showing it in the landed configuration with the arms bowed downwards. The front ramp is open, much like it is in the video footage that we just saw. And really, apart from the huge fin on the middle of the ship, there really are no changes evident whatsoever. When we come back to the footage that I showed you at the beginning of the video, you can now really start to see this. It's the same configuration. The front ramp is open, the arms are bent down. Nothing really substantial apart from the dorsal fin has really changed with the ship, and that's kind of the core of the problem. Now some people might say, well, is visibility really all that much of an issue? Well, it is. Now this image here, some of you may remember this, but this was based off of the original model of the ship. This was what kind of set a whole bunch of people on fire on the forums, and what led to the Q&A situation and all of that is this image from the cockpit of the Defender. That's what those two prongs in flight configuration look like from the cockpit view. Now the cockpits in the latest versions seem to sit a little bit higher, but in the end, you're still really dealing with the same problem. You've just moved those arms down a few inches. Now this image here is a little bit over the shoulder. So it's slightly distorted from what you're going to see, but you can definitely see much more clearly in flight configuration how much these arms are going to affect you. Even if the cockpit's riding just a little bit higher, this could end up being a major issue for the pilot. And, visibility is one of the things you need in a dogfight. You need to be able to see what you're fighting. And that's why I kind of go and I say augmented reality, things like that. That's where they need to look at in the UI. They've got to figure out a way to kind of overcome this challenge, because this is really a big problem. This isn't like the Vanduul Glaive, or the Scythe. This is something entirely different. This is kind of a big issue. This is I would argue even a bigger issue than something like the Caterpillar, because at least the Caterpillar has clear visibility to one side that you can use to a certain extent to kind of gauge a position and then side slip into it and land. Whereas with this fighter, that's entirely blocked for you. And that's why I kind of, when we're talking about the structural problems with this fighter, the chance to fix this structurally has come and gone. Like that is no longer a thing. You can't fix this fighter structurally anymore. Like, you've gone and you've built it almost to the point of being flight ready. You can't go back and delay it yet again to, go and give it what would be a fairly significant structural makeover. Like, that opportunity has passed. So you have to kind of fix this in a UI way. I'm not sitting here and saying that, shit, you should just, go back to square one, because that's not viable for anybody. One of the biggest problems that Star Citizen faces is the perception that, everything takes forever and the game is never going to get finished. Well, if you keep knocking back ships and going back to square one, that's, that kind of feeds that perception. So you have to look to a system that's coming, in the future, something that you're building anyways, like the user interface, like the new HUD and all of that, and you have to look to that to solve your problems that you didn't fix when you had the chance. You have to look at it realistically. Now, doing this through UI is, I think, a viable compromise and a good compromise. Yet, you know what? The ship has flaws, but we can overcome it using this system that we're planning to implement anyway, or some of these systems that we're looking at implementing. These can solve these problems. That's a great idea, and I think that, it really works for the players who are kind of feeling like, you know what, I'm on board for this. I'm on board for this game. I love this universe, but I really, sooner rather than later, I would like to see some sense of progression, some sense of meaning to my gameplay, beyond just trying ships out and trying out new features and then putting the game down and playing something else because it's not ready yet. At some point, Star Citizen does have to become a viable finished product, and unfortunately, I think that we are going to hit a point in the future, and I think that this would actually probably be better suited as a whole other video, but I think we are going to hit a point in the future where we're going to see Star Citizen more or less forced into a position where what exists in the game is going to have to be stabilized and made into a viable product, and other things are going to have to be set aside while the main work goes on making a game that really is not just engaging and not just immersive, but worth playing on a day-by-day basis, which unfortunately Star Citizen really isn't at this point. And what we're kind of dealing with here is, ultimately, it's the Star Citizen paradox, right? Like, if you imagine the 3.6 universe that we're playing in right now, if you imagine that as entirely stable, I know, it takes a little imagination to do it, but if you imagine that the game currently was entirely stable and everything that you did now built into 3.7 and built into 3.8, if you were progressing, if you were moving forward, you'd be a lot more understanding of certain feature delays. You'd be a lot more willing to deal with these things if you could get into the game right now and actually start doing fun and interesting things with your friends in a stable environment. The problem is, of course, is that you can't really create a stable environment right now because as new features come in, they obviously break different things, and there's always going to be all kinds of bugs. So I mean, that's kind of the nature of game development. You can't really ask for a stable environment right now, but in a way, that's kind of what Star Citizen really needs to take off, is a stable environment to showcase what's possible. And I think that that is going to become increasingly more important as time goes on. You have to remember that we're, plus or minus, we're pretty much 8 years into development on this game. And people are really hungry to actually play Star Citizen the game and not Star Citizen the demo. And I think that, situations like the Defender where it's like, okay, you know what, it's got structural flaws, but we're just going to fix it using this. Things like that are going to become a lot more prevalent in the future as Star Citizen moves more in the direction of trying to present a viable product rather than an interesting demo. But that, I think, is a whole other video unto itself. Anyways, that's the show for today. A little bit rambly, but I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.